Hello and welcome to Season 3, Episode 7 of The Dive. I am Kobe, joined by Azael. And this week, we have not one, but two guests. Phreak is joining us, as usual, for a new patch. Plus, we have Golden Guardians coach Inero.
What up, man?
How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good. Can't complain. Life's good.
So let's start it off because not many people actually follow the coaches.
Yeah.
So let's get people a little bit of background for Inero. You know, what's your background in the scene? Where'd you come from? And how did you shoot to these high heights of Golden Guardians head coach?
So I started in Europe, actually. It worked for like a really small amateur team called Prides, and we were trying to get in the UK league and stuff. It was actually with my my good friend Dan, who's playing for Fnatic Academy right now. They needed an analyst, so I was doing analyst work for them. And then that turned into, hey, we need a coach for the team I'm joining, Mouse Sports. Started coaching for Mouse Sports, did pretty good, and just kind of like snowballed from there. I also played at Mouse Sports.
Oh, yeah?
So I'm a professional player.
What did you play?
I subbed in for 80 carry, and it was a really good int.
You auto-filled and died level 1 in lane.
I did not die level 1 in lane. I got first blood.
Okay.
I'm actually really clean. And then I disconnected because
That's when you died.
I was actually in the same house.
Wait, you disconnected from a pro game?
Yeah. So I was playing G2, and I lived with most of the G2 players. I was living with Perks and Smitty J at the time who were on it. And then after I killed one of them, my internet suspiciously disconnected. So I honestly still think that there's some suspicious stuff going on there. But I got first blood.
Shady organization.
Then I immediately died. So I also would have first blooded Jez's if I flashed, and Wonder flamed me on Twitter for that one, but I could have done it. It would have been really clean.
They DDoSed you.
Yeah, they did, actually. It's really messed
And
up.
after that one failure, and then you were kind of sentenced to a life of coaching?
A life of coaching. Yeah. My hands just stopped working after that. I was too old. And now I'm here. Yeah. I got snowballed around to a bunch of different regions. I came to NA for a bit. Didn't think I was going to continue with coaching. Ended up going to Australia. Had a plan to bring back some players from there to NA. Then franchising happened, so that wasn't going to be possible. And everything else over there happened. So really wasn't going to be possible. And then I ended up on Echo Fox.
So how did you actually, get your start as an analyst then? Because, there's a lot of people I think that I see them messaging me on Twitter and these sorts of things on social media where people are saying, oh yeah, so how do you become a coach? How do you get in the scene? How do you become an analyst? So how did you actually prove to some of these teams to get them to hire you?
I mean, it's always really weird stuff. Like a lot of the stuff that people do right now trying to get in is all like correct. And it's just kind of being in the right place at the right time and just getting a little bit lucky that you got to kind of talk to someone and like prove like, hey, I kind of know what I'm talking about. Because looking back, like I was a complete idiot. Like everything I knew was
wrong.
I had like good ideas about things, but a lot of it was really bad. And you kind of just learn by being in it. And I just had a connection with a guy who needed someone for that team and was working on it.
There you go. Just have to get lucky.
Oh, and actually, I think like a lot of people for being successful, there's a little bit of luck always.
Yeah.
Like you have to just like have a random opportunity pop up and then like just take it immediately.
I hear a lot of stories like that. Like Zix, he was just a Redditor on the CLG Reddit, and he kept on like telling Hotshot like change this, change that, and Hotshot was like,
that sounds pretty good.
You want to come over and do that for us like full time?
Yeah.
His is like 1 part luck though, and I think 99 parts hard work, right? Because he was sending them, he like a massive documents detailing all his thoughts on everything, unpaid for a while, right? Apparently sending Hotshot like 6-page emails and stuff like this. You should have done this. And this is my analysis on this game. So, I mean, I definitely think that there is luck involved in success, somewhat, right? But I also think that you can outwork it to a point, right? Where it's like,
well, you increase your chances, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, you got to be working all the time so that like when it happens, it's just like, okay, I'm already ready.
Yeah.
Like for me, I was in Florida. I was working some like ropes course job. And then I had that opportunity pop up. And then I just flew to Ireland like the next day. It's just like, I'm out.
That's very busy.
So, I had to take my little jump, but definitely a little bit lucky for that one.
That's cool. All right. So something that people have been kind of talking about recently is Doublelift sent out a 2 a.m. tweet the other day talking about the priority of mountain dragons. Let me actually just pull up the tweet here. The first tweet is 2 a.m. tweet, but I think Mountain Drake is so game-breaking and competitive. The other 3 Drakes are basically stat buffs, but playing around Paper, Bear, and Elder Towers always feels cheesy. Of course, a strategy that revolves around having a mountain and setting up Baron, but I wonder if there's another way. As a player and also a viewer, I like seeing fights and back and forth around objectives, but Mountain Dragon usually takes the element away.
He got a lot of feedback for this tweet, by the way, even though he titled it with the 2 a.m. qualifier. I think the majority of people were actually disagreeing with him, which is kind of unusual for, super popular pro player ideas about the game.
Yeah.
But personally, I do as well. There's a lot of other Drakes I would rather have early on, especially Ocean Drake.
Yeah, give me an Ocean, please.
Yeah.
Every single day.
Ocean's silly. Yeah, I think this definitely seems to happen. And I understand sort of why. I feel like there's a difference between satisfaction and raw power level. I think the raw power level, your actual effect in you winning a game on Mountain Drake is very, very low. Like, if you're a team who's got control over Baron, you've got control over Baron whether or not it dies 17% faster. Like, almost always. But yeah, it turns out like 5% more ability power will sometimes win you a fight it wouldn't have won you, or 3% move speed will win you a fight it wouldn't have won you before. And maybe that's not as satisfying because 3% movement speed all the time is so diffuse. It's hard to know, like, oh, I caught that guy because my move speed is 9 higher. Like, you don't realize it, but you're like, wow, we killed that Baron so fast. Like, yeah, but the jungle wasn't going to reach you anyway.
I realize
You
it
never think
now
about that.
because there's all these speed lines going behind me when you get a Cloud Drake. You definitely look super cool.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Ocean for me is the one that I feel the most by far. If you're playing a lot of different champions, it's completely game warping, right? I know you mentioned Ezreal when we were talking about it earlier, but there's a lot, right? And I always feel like if you're playing top lane and you're playing an early game matchup trying to actually bully someone and they get Ocean, it just feels like it's doomed, right? Because then they use all their mana on the wave and they just go stand under their turf for 30 seconds. It kicks in. They're regenerating enough to kind of almost always stay there. It just feels like you just gave them a free like catalyst passive basically or whatever, right? So it becomes very, very warping, I think, in the lane matchups. And that's why I think that one is so effective. But like Infernal is kind of the like sexy dragon for lack of a better term because people just see, oh, look how much AD I have. Look how much AP I have.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think Mountain's like weird because if you're ahead, it's really OP because now you can just take Baron like that. But if you're behind, like, what does it actually do? Like, you're not taking turrets, so it's just you can maybe sneak a Baron or something, or maybe sneak a dragon, but that's not guaranteed. The other team has control. Like, how are you even going to get into Baron?
That's what I was gonna say. There are some exciting moments where because you have a mountain or 2 mountains, then you can go for 2-man Barons. Some super exciting, sneaky moment. But I do think those are pretty rare, and it's not going to really turn around a game. I feel like if you're using mountains normally, then it's a substitute for good setup work, like good fundamentals, where you're controlling your vision around the Baron, you're pushing them off. Like, the team that's ahead should be able to have these fundamentals, and mountain is a way to kind of bypass those, I guess. So maybe it's good for those types of situations.
I mean, it's definitely the only dragon that like brings up saying, yeah, they have 2 mountains. We really have to be careful about Baron now. They can take it so fast. No one ever says like, yeah, they have 2 clouds. They can get bottom really fast. That never gets said. So that's definitely the annoying part of it.
That's true.
So do you guys like that though? Because to me, I think that it's somewhat interesting, right? When I was working on playtests when they were putting in the elemental dragons and putting in these different things, and I think part of the idea was certainly that there's different gameplay implications based on these different dragons, right? And that it's going to make you want to take them more with different comps or play around the game differently. And it does feel like, to your point, that Mountain is actually accomplishing that if it changes the way that you have to play against and perhaps even changes the way that you play as. So I don't think it's the most effective dragon, but it is interesting if in these small section of games, this subsection of games, maybe where you have the Cassio plus whatever, and you can actually 2-man it, and that allows your other 3-man to, just kind of like not give away that the Baron's being taken because they're showing on the map. Things like that. Do you guys like the idea that is in the game, or should they just be more the generic stat buffs to take double swords?
I like it if it's not random. I like it if we kind of know ahead of time, at least like what the first 2 dragons are or something. So when I'm drafting, we kind of know, like, okay, this is going to be a game where Mountain's going to be involved. So maybe something that's going to actually take Baron matters. Or Ocean's the first dragon. So I probably need champions that can take the first dragon. Otherwise, it's gonna suck. Like, that would be nice.
A pushing bot lane. If you
it would be really good to know, because if I like lock in just Ezreal into something and I'm gonna like sacrifice Prio early, and then it's just an Ocean Dragon and I'm playing Ezreal against that, that's gonna suck, man. That's not gonna feel good.
One thought I had a while ago when we were talking about changing up the way that picks bans and works and all this stuff going into the game. I was thinking of what if teams could trade dragon selection for the first dragon. Because it would add that element of, in a lot of other games, they have different maps that people play on. And, some people are better at some maps than others. And there's this interesting kind of back and forth that's similar to Champion Select. Like if you had another variable of being able to choose the first dragon, and that had to be declared before a Champion Select.
Right.
It just kind of makes maybe the pick and ban, at least for professional play. Maybe not. Maybe it's not a good thing for solo queue because it has to be random. Maybe professional play only. But any thoughts on that little game that is bouncing around?
So for me, I don't like the idea of adding another phase between the game starting and the game starting.
Start the game now.
I think drafting is already boring for most viewers, and now I'm gonna get the tweets of like, "How dare you? Drafting is super exciting!" And it's like, I understand for some people.
Resident Sleeper Phreak talking about the elemental Drake selection.
I do professional VOD review for my job, and we pause right before the last lock-in goes, "Okay, they pick these things, cool, it's all normal," and then we actually watch the real game, right? Like that's how it works, because you're like, oh yeah, they first picked Urgot, cool, okay, normal league, let's move on. So I don't know, so to take an extra step back, it's like I want things that matter to also be exciting. It's the Mountain Drake of drafts, right? It's like Mountain Drakes do things that are poignant. You care about Mountain Drake existing because X thing happens. So I don't want the Cloud Drake of drafts where you're like, cool, it kind of matters. So either way, I don't think it's super exciting. The idea of, hey, let's just tell people what the first Drake is. I think that's relevant, right? Okay, first Drake is Ocean. Okay, we're gonna play for bot lane priority. And that's part of the draft. That's fine. Yeah. It's just there. Okay, cool, we can talk about it, but it doesn't add time to the setup.
And that's okay. I got more games where that came from.
That's what I always wanted, honestly. And I think a lot of people in development were kind of arguing for that. Yeah. If you show this, I actually think it increases the interest of draft, because then you can see how people are going to change their plan based around that, right? Yep. If it is that early game Ocean, is it actually a Lucian versus Draven bot lane because both people are trying to fight really heavily for priority, and and you have an early game jungler and blah blah blah. Yeah. And if it's the Mountain, does no one?
I think you give up. Yeah.
Exactly, right. What do you actually change? Do people actually shift their draft around that? And I think Ocean probably would be the most significant for that, because people would really want to play for bot lane priority, whereas playing for an early Infernal doesn't necessarily matter because you still have to get late enough that it's really having a big effect. But I always thought that would be a bit of an interesting twist.
As far as solo queue, I have changed my priorities to always be looking for how I can sneak early dragons on the bottom side, or if the enemy jungler ever shows top. It's such a high priority for me now, because you actually don't lose out on your experience. And it's worth so much more gold in addition to the power bonus being higher.
And you're playing Tiger Udyr, so it dies in 4 seconds.
Exactly. That's part of the reason why I play.
Yeah, it's great.
Champions that can solo dragon at any time if there's ever any window. And it kind of has changed the setup for the game. I don't know if that's true for pro play at all. Have you designed things for the team to focus on early dragon control, or at least bottom side?
You mean team concepts? We're talking about it? Yeah, there actually is a thing. We have, it's kind of a dumb name for a play, and I did not come up with this. I'm not this conceited.
You name your plays. I like this.
Our players call it just Nick Smithing. So that's my name.
You, by the way.
That's my name. And that has to do with how we set up around dragon control. So that's a little interesting. We focused a lot in December and January about setting up for it and looking at how specifically Griffin was setting up their dragons early, because they had really, really high control of it compared to the other teams playing in LCK, which probably just because they're really good. But they had specific habits they were doing. So we looked at stuff like that. But I think the dragon thing would actually be really interesting if we knew the first two, because that would mess with Herald too. Because if the second dragon coming up is going to be a bad dragon, you can take dragon as early as possible, already know what it is, and already know ahead of time, let's make sure we have a top laner that's going to be able to play around Herald at the start, because I think Herald is insanely OP compared to most of the dragons too.
Especially with plates now.
Yeah, it's a 300 gold conversion to your top laner.
You get so much money from it. There's a thing with Loco, who a breakdown of all the gold you get from it, and it's just a stupid amount. You get so much gold. I don't know. I think a lot of the stuff with dragon change and knowing about it would make drafting so much more interesting, and would make drafting for me so much more fun. I feel there's a lot of advantages you can get. I wish it would happen. It'd be nice.
Yeah, it definitely would be.
Yeah.
Well, regardless of these early game dragon leads, we haven't seen this topic. And Azael was kind of talking about it a decent amount in our story meeting of teams struggling to close out games in the LCS. We even had a Sven quote, where he was, I think was it on stream?
No, it was an interview. He was basically saying that. So I'm paraphrasing because this was a couple weeks ago now.
Yeah.
But the TLDR is if you're ahead and you can't close the game, it's just because you're bad, right? You know, he feels that the game is so easy to close from ahead now, but yet.
And then TSM proceed to.
They have the longest game time of any team in the LCS. But he was kind of firing some shots, I think, at Optic specifically in this interview where he was saying, you know, there was a question asked about why couldn't Optic close out this game. He's like, well, it's because they're bad. You know, if you're ahead, you should be able to get Baron. Baron's so OP, you close the game.
Yeah, I mean, you should be able to close out. I feel like it's actually really easy to close out the game, but it's not. It's hard when both teams are setting up for team fighting, and I'm gonna get mean for that again. I know for sure, but it's whatever team is the most consistent for sure is usually gonna end up winning because they're not gonna make a mistake. And so like you'll see the teams that are like picking for scaling and stuff. And then, they're probably going to lose early, but I think that a lot of teams go into the draft and kind of like expect that. And the top teams for sure just know like, yeah, we'll probably lose early, but it doesn't matter. These teams aren't good enough to actually close the game. Like it happened to us. Like I know Team Liquid C9 playing against us. I'm sure they did that and they were happy with it and they were fine. And that's life. They got experienced players, you know, and they got veterans that are actually like going to know how to play the game really well. I've played together for a good amount of time too. And they've changed people around, but not enough people to really shake up their like shot calling core. You're just going to win games from behind if you're just, you know, a better core of players that have experience together as a team.
So why do you think teams are struggling so much then to actually get vision around Baron? Because that is the biggest thing that is almost, it's frustrating to watch when, you know, I was casting both 100 Thieves games last weekend. I've cast a lot of these number of games. And I do think, honestly, the quality of games over the last couple of weeks in the LCS has been a lot lower than I feel like I'm used to. And a lot of that is to do with one team gets a significant advantage and then they just kind of like sit there and they just wait for 10, 15 minutes. They're never actually trying to push vision up into opponent's jungle. They're never actually denying, you know, access to the Baron pit. So they just kind of like go back and forth. They put a pink in the pit. They like leave. The other team comes in, kills it, puts their pink in the pit. And they just kind of keep doing this back and forth. And, you know, what is it that's making that so difficult for teams? Because when you watch like Cloud9, I think is the best example of this, where I actually think they're so good at getting vision not only around the Baron pit, but then they use that to actually push up the vision and completely take over that section of the jungle. And once you lose access of that section of the jungle, then you can no longer even check in the pit, and they eventually just take a Baron, or they, you know, someone has to face check and they die, and then they take the Baron, right? So, like, what is it that's so much more difficult about that, from your point of view, than what appears to be?
I don't even think it's something that's like new. I think it's been like this for a while. Teams have always struggled with it, and it just feels like it's probably a bit more blatant this split, where it feels like it should be really easy. But I feel like it's always been like this. There's always been the like top few teams, because I complained about this last year when I was on Echo Fox too. Is like that I didn't think that TL or the other top teams are actually that great. It was just they're consistent, and they're really consistent about the fundamentals, and that's ultimately all that matters. I feel like setting up Baron is the same as it's always been. There's really no huge difference. Like there's nothing weird with the minion waves or anything. Like it's all really the same.
You keep saying like the top teams. Licorice actually commented on this, and he said that C9, TSM, and Team Liquid, between them and the rest of the league, there's a huge gap in game knowledge. Is that where you would draw the line? Is there anyone else you would put up there above the line?
Yeah, Golden Guardians are also in the top
They have a
position.
great coaching staff, I've heard. You know, really well educated in the meta.
I think that C9 TL for sure. I don't agree with TSM. I know they've been scrimming a lot, so they probably have like their own perception, but we've been scrimming TSM a lot too. I think that outside of the top two, the teams are like really inconsistent. Like including us, we're really inconsistent when it comes to playing on stage. I know a lot of teams have the same problem where in scrims they look completely different than on stage, just because we're playing them, so we know what they look like. And then they show up on stage and they're a completely different team. Like some teams are playing a lot worse and some teams are playing a lot better. Like there's definitely some teams we've seen that I don't think should have as many wins as they do, and they're hanging out like in a really good spot. And you know that happens. So I think it's just what's up?
Throw shade. Who is it?
I'm not doing that.
Who's the fraudulent team in fourth place?
I'm not going to comment on that one, Phreak. I have to avoid
Come on, this is our TMZ reporter over here.
Does it start with C? F.
How many teams start with C?
CLG, C9, Clutch.
I'm just going to avoid the question.
Okay.
That's good. I don't know. I think it's always been the same. I think the teams are. Everyone has like their own different problems for why they aren't doing well.
Isn't that
like,
even more disappointing though? Like, isn't that just you know, to This is going to sound aggressive, but isn't that a failure of coaching then?
Oh, yeah.
Or because if it is the same thing, and you truly believe that, like I've felt like from the observer point of view, it's more egregious this year, and maybe that is because by comparison, a lot of the other leagues are speeding up. LCK was always the slowest league in the world. Now it's not. It's NA, right? So isn't that a bit of a failure of the coaching staff then? If it's not really changed, why can these teams not understand the concept that has not changed in league for so long?
Oh yeah, I think like it is. I think I've talked about this a lot too. Is like I think the whole practice structure is really not the best overall, and it feels really wonky, like playing other teams, and your level of practice will differ from day to day depending on who you're playing, and also just because of like how the players personally are taking stuff. And that's not to like fault players or fault like staff specifically for it. It's like a different mix of issues. I think some teams struggle purely because they can have good coaching staff, but they built their team pretty poorly, and they're going to struggle with what they have. And I think some teams have built really good teams, and then like coaching wise, like whatever is happening is not working. And that exists everywhere, and everyone has their own problems. And you'll always see it that the top teams who have their stuff together, have a good structure, have a good set of players, are usually just sitting on top. And it's because they have something consistent set up, and they're going to have consistency in games. And outside of that, teams are searching for it for sure and trying to build it up.
Something that I used to hear a lot in the past from pro players, and this has definitely changed as time has gone on and the league has been professional for more time, but a lot, especially the older players, have had a hard time trusting coaching staff because they're used to only trusting their abilities and other people who are challenger, and you have to gain this rank to be able to prove that you understand the game. Have you had any difficulty in kind of gaining that trust, or how have you approached your coaching style? Not necessarily having the challenger badge or professional player like Reaper or Song or somebody to dangle over them.
Yeah, I mean, well, like I said, professional player. I'm the
there you go.
I'm the only
challenge doesn't count.
Okay, but I'm the only North American import player to play in Europe.
Okay.
So I got that going for me.
Good job.
But yeah, no, it is definitely something difficult to build up. It's pretty hard. But once you have it, you're usually fine. And like people will trust you, and like that word
Look
kind
them
of
in the eye.
It's usually not that hard once you kind of like set the precedent for yourself, and like everyone kind of knows what to expect from you. But it's definitely one of the harder things to build up if you're not already just a high elo player. Thankfully for me, like I've been like relatively high elo for a while. I haven't played the game since like season 4 very, very much. But it's difficult. It's really hard. You have to find some way to prove it and get them to actually think that what you're saying matters. And some people approach it from a different standpoint. Like I know Weldon's not like, his isn't about like the actual game focus side and more of the like out of game, like mental side of things. And that's obviously garnered respect from players that he's worked with. And then some people approach it from the game knowledge side, which I'm sure like Reaper, Kane, those guys can really easily hit that because they're still actively challenger players when they decide to play, But yeah, it's difficult. For me, I kind of had a bit from both sides that I leaned on. And yeah, I had success with that, but I think all the coaches are still growing. Like we're all still figuring it out.
Yeah.
Like I'm about to turn 25. Like most coaches in other sports are not this young, man. Yep. Like I'm still the same age as a lot of the players. Like Froggen's older than me by a week or something.
Sure. Yeah.
It's hard to build up, but we're all learning. So.
You mentioned practice habits. I'm actually very curious. It's a topic I'm asking everyone I can get access to because I've sort of held the opinion for a while that there's always so many sort of undiscovered, untested picks that are good, but no one's playing. Easy example being like Urgot was probably great for a really long time, but only really showed up at Worlds. So the question is basically, how do you get around the fact that you're like, hey, like you have Froggen on your team. He wants to play Anivia. He's like, oh, it's a good meta for Anivia. He's good against all the meta mid laners. But he's the only guy who's going to play Anivia. Like, no one else is going to practice that champion. And so when you're scrimming, we'll say TSM, and Bjergsen's like, why am I scrimming Anivia? Cloud9's not going to play Anivia. Nissy's not going to play Anivia. Like, how do you get reps then when no one wants to play the things you want to play?
So you either do internals or you accept that you'll get one game of it in scrims. You'll bust out that one game, try to make it as good as possible, and then if they're going to permaban it, that's life. It's actually really difficult. But I think it's a bad habit that teams do. And I can understand why you want to do it after a certain point. So I really respect teams that kind of let players just get their reps in like against it, and then they decide like halfway through the day, like, okay, we're not playing against this. Because I think you can play against different champions and still build up like fundamentally what you're trying to do. But I think a lot of people fall into the trap of just thinking like this is just that specific champion, and I'm only learning about that specific champion. And I think that's like a bad approach, but that definitely happens. Like, I mean, you saw everyone banning Draven versus us in the first few weeks of LCS, right? They did the same thing in scrims. Like for the first
You've actually just not practiced Draven.
for the first few weeks of LCS, which is good now because this time has passed and like people I think have stopped trying to do it to us and they're actually trying to play against it. Everyone banned Draven versus us every single game. And for drafting, that's so OP. Like, okay, I know they're going to ban one thing, and if they don't, we're just going to play it. So, like, picks like that, if people feel forced to ban it in practice and then they're forced to ban it on stage because they're scared of it, like, they doomed themselves in practice. Like, they did that to themselves at that point.
Do you want to debunk a rumor then about the Heimerdinger that, because definitely very publicly, like, it felt like it was just everywhere, right? Where they're advertising, definitely got trained by Heisendong. Everybody be aware, definitely trained by Heisendong. Number one, Heimerdinger in NA. And then you drew bans like every single game.
You think he just like hyped it up?
Was was that like was there forethought in that, or was that actually just happened naturally?
I don't know. I wasn't on Golden Guardians at that point. I was scrimming against them every now and then, but I know that teams would ban it. Was that what?
Were you shook then? You're like,
oh yeah, God. No, we would ban Heimer if they pulled it out multiple times. It's just like it's hard to play against, and then I would try to force us to play it. Like I thought it was OP. I played a bunch of Heimer like back when it happened. Actually, clapped out Reckless in solo queue. I had to tweet about that one.
And then he benched himself.
yeah. It's actually specifically because of my Heimer. That
I believe it.
He recognized and said, I just can't play anymore.
Yeah.
You've had such an impact on the marksman role.
I know.
Yeah, what can I say? I'm just the best off-roll marksman ever. I'm really good.
Facts.
No, I think when you have picks like that, it's so OP. And people just have to play against it or play it themselves. I think if you're having to ban a champion from someone, you should be playing that champion. There's no excuse then. Like if it's really that OP, play it.
So why do teams then, to use the TSM example, the Anivia, so Frog wants to play Anivia, why does TSM not just say, okay, you guys get 2 games of Anivia, but then Broken Blade thinks Teemo top is the new hotness. So you give us 2 games of Teemo. Like why do teams not make these trades where, they have their pick that they want to prepare that everyone else is banning, you have your pick that you want to prepare. Why is it not just like, okay, shake hands and both prepare your cool picks and then have an advantage over everyone else in the league?
I think teams would just prefer to do that internal if they want to do it. I don't know. There's never really been that type of conversation. You can reach out, and depending on how cool you are with the other coaching staff, like you might get that opportunity, but usually it's just down to like, hey, can we play 3 games of red side for the first block and then 3 games of blue for the second, rather than anything with champions. I don't know. I think you could do it and it'd be fine, but I think teams just prefer to have their drafts feel more like organic and not knowing really what to expect, and then just trying to sneak it in if they can do it. So
I have a question on that actually. I was going to ask about drafting. Like, I assume every stream you ever play, you're drafting for real. You're like competing to like try to draft the best comp. Like, is it ever worth being like, let's not practice a draft? Like, hey, we think we're going to get these 5 champions against TL next week. Like, hey, whoever we're scrimming, Echo Fox, whoever it is, like, we just want to play these 5 champions. And it's like practice this comp. Like, does that ever happen? Like, is that worth doing? But like, is there really a reason to like practice drafting against a team when you're not even going to play them on that patch anyway? Like, you will literally never play the team again until it's the next patch and the draft changes.
I think there's merit to practicing drafting just because it gets you kind of used to responding to different things because every team does something different. But no team is just going to be like, yeah, I'll play these 5 champs against you. Like, sure. Because the other teams just don't want to have their champions picked for them, because then if they're not playing it, they're like, well, I'm wasting my time, why am I playing these champions? But I think a lot of that is down to teams just kind of not focused on building fundamentals in practice and more on just playing champions versus other champions and just seeing how it goes, really. I think that happens a lot, and that's a failure on coaching from all of us that are coaching, really.
It does feel weird that like there's so many champs and so many flexes and whatnot in League of Legends. Like, you can't realistically practice every matchup. Yeah,
it's impossible. Like, anyone, any weekend can just pull out something really dumb. You think anyone practiced against us playing Rengar top last year?
No.
In Echo Fox, where it was the jungler playing Rengar top? Never happened, but we practiced it. So
it worked.
So we have it. Like, you can't prepare for everything. It's so impossible. But I think a lot of people have that like fantasy of, we'll get to practice against all of this. And it's difficult. I can understand it, but it's hard to force. all those scenarios for sure.
Yeah, it seems like strong academy team is a huge boon then. Like Cloud9 gets to practice against theirs all the time, and they're actually good.
Yeah. No, I think academy teams are really overpowered. I think it's really nice. If you have a good academy team and you can practice against them and like consistently do internals, I think that's a really good setup. Like from that one split I had with Echo Fox where we were only doing that and that was like we were like made to do. A lot of it was a meme, but I could definitely see some of the small things that were actually going to be really good from it if it was a good setup and wasn't just, like forced.
Yeah.
All right, well, we got a tweet here from Eric Pigeon, who he wants to know about 9.5. He's asking, do 9.5 buffs put Skarner immediately back in the pro meta? As the Spire's not on the map, seems like a huge buff for pro play.
Yeah. Is anyone else as excited for 9.5 as Captain Flowers?
No.
I don't think it's possible.
He's leading the charge. And his army of 5
He literally
behind him.
joined the team so he could put these Skarner changes in the game.
These were changes he has been asking for as long as I've known him.
Yeah.
I remember one of the first conversations I had with him when he talked. He's like, "Yep, I'm a Skarner main," and he's like, "You know what's stupid is that I take a Spire when I'm counter jungling, and they see me."
He might have brought that up in the interview. I don't remember because I remember interviewing him about like he was Diamond 2 at the time. I was like, "Wow, you're really good." He's like, "Yeah, but I'm a Skarner one trick," and I feel like we talked about Spires in the interview.
These were his changes that they asked him for feedback, and he gave them to him, and they're in the game.
Yep.
He's happy.
And I actually think they're very strong. So to answer the question, I personally think that it could, because tank junglers, I think is a very strong class to have your jungler as right now, with less experience coming in later.
And you're playing less tank tops also, so you need them comp-wise.
Exactly. And Skarner really fits that role well because he has the great level 6 ultimate, super impactful. And not only can you not see the Spires on the minimap now, but the range for the Spire buff is insane. They added like 400 range onto it or something.
Yeah, 450.
And that makes him a completely different champion when he's within that. So much attack speed, mana regeneration, movement speed, everything. It makes him an actual powerhouse duelist.
Yep. I don't want to see Skarner. I hate that.
You're going to be banning him?
It's so boring.
Rek'Sai, then you got to ban all these junglers.
Yeah. It's so boring. Like he just presses R on you. I have to build QSS. It's like the Malzahar of jungle. It's not fun.
It actually is the Malzahar of jungle, completely.
Yeah.
That's what I think is really strong, though, right? If you can pick one champion and it forces their carries to disrupt their itemization, even if they all have QSS and you don't have a good ult target anymore, that is still so valuable. And then you just ult a tank or whatever, right? I do think that there's a lot of power in that, and the fact that he can actually farm every single camp on Aspire now is really powerful as well. He's also, you talked about champions that are good at taking Dragon. Skarner can take Dragon easy peasy. So, it seems like he's, as far as the question goes, I think he's definitely back in there for pro. I do feel like teams have been kind of a week behind actually changing up a lot of their picks. Every time a new patch comes out, it seems like first week is just last patch.
Yeah, get on that.
Second week is actually new patch. Yeah. It's kind of how I've been feeling the cadence has been going in LCS. So we'll see if this bucks the trend a bit, but we might not see him first week, but I think we'll for sure see him.
Yeah, I'm excited for him. I also personally am excited for Vi. I don't think the pros are going to pick up Vi, even if it is strong in the new state, because there's a stigma attached to this champion. Like many champions that have not been in pro play for years and years and years, pro players just seem like they're not willing to push that extra chance, I guess, outside and try, even if there are significant buffs to a lot of these champions. And these changes to Vi, yes, the people that play her now are going to be a little bit sad because you build a Ghost Blade and everything now, it's full damage. You want to burst people from 100 to 0. Yep. But these changes, they take away some of the AD ratios. They give you back base damages, tankiness, everything. Like it actually makes her such an incredible bruiser jungler. I think it fits more into the way that the game is structured for junglers now. And I'm definitely going to get back on the Vi train. I actually asked last episode for her to be the champion that makes it into pro play. But I'm definitely going to test her out in solo queue at the very least.
It's cool. Yeah. Feels like you W max second because it's where your attack speed is now.
Yeah.
You build a bit more tanky.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Also, the AoE can crit. if you happen to get
You have
super
to go
fan
IE
and you
for some reason.
Yeah.
That's like the most troll change.
know.
Because like,
I saw
okay,
it.
if it was old Stormrazor, sure, but like, nope.
I saw that and I was
The
like,
Nick
it's
Wu
gonna
change.
bait some
He
people.
built Static Shiv on Vi.
Great.
But it does seem like it is much more tank Vi, right? Or
Yeah.
warrior into
Bruiser.
tank.
I think Bruiser's good.
That sort of thing. Maybe more like Jarvan-esque builds or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it seems like it could be pretty strong. I think a lot of the changes are very small in the patch. One that stood out to me, just because I think it's kind of silly, is the Mundo change, where it just feels like this is not fixed Mundo whatsoever. Mundo already is so good against heavy AP teams, and his problem is that he loses basically to all these physical damage dealers who can just rush executioners and slam you, and Morello's is so easy to build in the game right now. But either way, the change is from 2% per stack of increased magic resistance on his E, it goes up to 3. So at max rank E, you have 42% extra MR. So he's such a counter to AP heavy teams now that I really do think people should actually be picking him. They probably should have already, but if someone ever drafts, AP jungle top mid, and
next time you see Rumble Silas, it's like just insta-lock his champion.
you should actually just pick him and you rush a Spirit Visage. And you can actually, max your E.
Yep.
And you just take no damage.
The first thing that came to my mind was the Cloud9 game that we just had versus TSM, where TSM's got Zoe and Nico side lane, AP, and a bunch of poke. Mundo's great against poke. He soaks it all up. And if his magic resistance is off the charts, then it's not even going to take that long to regen, even if they rush Morellos.
Yeah, and then you're playing Mundo and a Nico. Like your turret's
gone.
Your turret's gone in 9
side
minutes.
lane is going to be rough. So I feel like that's the point that they have to move with these, or that's what they're trying to move with this magic resist thing.
I feel like at a certain point you actually just don't take damage. So maybe the on hit build is different, but against the full AP build that TSM actually did, I think once Mundo has a cowl, you actually take no damage anymore. If you're going Emax first, you can legit just have a cowl and you can just stand in the wave with your W on and just kill the minions.
If he's going full AP, then maybe. But
the on hit feels so insane though. The on hit Nico build that was on Reddit.
Yeah, it's really good. I played against it in solo queue earlier this week, and my top laner got slammed.
I actually saw Broken Blade streaming, and he started spamming it too after his full AP Nico game. So maybe he's changed his ways.
I think everyone kind of expected him to do the on hit thing when he played on the weekend, and then he just busted out full AP.
Do you have some secret stuff from 9.5 you've been able to mad scientist? I know you don't have to share anything. 9.5? Or do you generally not look at the patch ahead until LCS catches up?
I never really look at it until like the week's kind of over, because otherwise I'd kind of start thinking of what happened on it, and then I start thinking that's kind of what happened, and it's really hard to like not fall into it. Like I actually stopped playing solo queue when it goes to like the patch change until we get past that weekend.
I usually do that during Worlds so that we don't say some random stuff from the new patch during a game.
New Ezreal, no.
I'll say something and Phreak will be there and he'll be like, well, yes, and that is wrong. And it's actually still the old way.
Well, yes, but actually no.
But, I mean, I hope that you at least have analysts in the lab then, because like Azael was talking about earlier, it does feel like teams have been missing opportunities to come in with super big week ones on new patches. Do you have a team in a lab set up here with some 9.5 study groups?
Yeah, we got people to look at it for sure, and I always do my own thing too afterwards, just to kind of see what's like changed. But yeah, we have people looking at it. But yeah, teams are actually pretty slow to change, like including us. Yeah. Like we change up usually after 1 week too. I think that's happened on the last patches as well.
Yeah.
On to LCS rather. I gotta stop saying NALCS. So we
have to have one of those rubber band things.
That's true. I can blame it. It's in the doc as NALCS.
Oh yeah. Writers.
You flaming Paul.
Yeah, that's true. I am flaming Paul. I'm flaming you, Paul. So either way, LCS. You said it top clear. There's a clear number 1 and number 2. There's, I guess, some debate as TSM fans will tell you that nope, TSM was clearly better. It was just one mistake.
Don't incur their wrath.
In the group. I think TSM are part of the group.
Yeah,
so I would agree. I think it's a top 3. That does look pretty clear. And then there's a ton of teams at 4th, and then there's kind of the clump, I guess, at the bottom as well. Below that,
the bottom 7 are all within 1 game of each other.
Yeah.
So anyone.
Yeah, and TSM are, after the loss to C9, obviously C9 is going to be going into this week playing against TL. That is kind of what most people are looking at as the battle of the best teams in the league. C9 has been very vocal about this matchup, and the players in interviews talking about, okay, well, if scrims are any indication, we're actually better than them. Licorice on cooldown, and Niski were saying that, yeah, this is what they've been looking forward to the whole year. You can't even really count the first game because that was Niski versus the person he replaced in the first game. So there's a lot of hype being built up to this game.
I agree with everything about everyone looking forward to the game. The thing about you can't count that first one that we lost, though.
He was like, well, he's so nerve wracking.
Yeah.
Licorice was like, oh God, I'm so glad I didn't have to play Impact my first game, right?
Yeah.
And I do kind of buy into that a little bit. Niski was saying he was incredibly nervous and missing cues on sleep targets as Zoe and whatnot.
Yeah.
Who you guys got?
I still count that first game, though, by the way.
You can count
I still count it too. Yeah.
I think I would still take TL, but I think it's really close. I just think that TL's bot lane is, like, at least in laning phase, a lot better than C9's. And I think mid lane as well, it's kind of the same, but they're both just really consistent. So, like, I think it comes down to just draft for them. Like, their teams are both just really, really good.
I kind of was talking about the bottom lane in our story meeting, too. It always feels like Doublelift, no matter what team he's been on, has always had this advantage over Sneaky on whatever team it is. You're always like, oh, well, but that bottom lane, it's going to be pretty scary down there. Doublelift, like, he's the one who created the Sneaky in lane meme. And to some extent, it kind of has been true. I also feel like those two teams are so different in their styles. Yep. Like, Cloud9 have tried a lot of different team compositions and played a lot of fast early games, and they even take a lot of risks, like, especially when they're against TSM, and you have to take the risk. They're super far behind against this poke comp. They go to Elder Dragon, they win this crazy team fight with Licorice flanking. Yep. Those type of risks, I feel like, are what got them success at Worlds this last year. And why it really epitomizes the difference between these two top teams, regardless of them both consistently being able to get top two.
Yeah, I really think it's just down to, like, it depends on how the draft is interacting with the laning phase for them. So if C9 has a really easy time getting out of laning phase with the draft they get, then I think it's fine for them. Like, I think if they just get an advantageous matchup and they're not going to get abused in it, it's actually really good for them, and it's the chance for them to win, because C9's actually dropped like a lot of gold leads just because of the fact that, like, their laning phase usually goes behind against certain teams. And I don't think that's something that's not abusable. I think teams can definitely abuse that depending on what they have, but you have to be, like, good enough to close. Like, we did the same thing. We weren't good enough to close. And, like, we also just made it a bit hard with what we had. But I think that if TL drafts correctly, which they have the tendency, I think, to int draft a little bit too, they can beat C9 pretty handily.
What is them drafting correctly?
Yeah, give us some insights on this.
You remember the first pick York game?
Yeah. Yes.
There were no
That was
fans.
an easy one. Even Reddit knows that one.
Yeah, that was really, I don't know, man.
They ran that one down. That was one of the worst drafts. Yeah.
They gifted that win to, it was against TSM, right?
Yeah, and there was also Silver with absolutely no front line and losing top lane, and then they didn't even play to that side of the map.
I mean, I saw there were a lot of people trying to defend it, like, oh, they didn't play to top side to help it. Like, no, man, they just first picked York. Like, you're not bailing him out of that. Like, he's gonna get ran down.
More than two counter picks. You can't just, like, ban two things and win your game.
I think York, good champion. Maybe not first pick.
Getting nerfed on 9.5.
He is
to tail back into.
It's a moderate nerf. It's actually not as big as it looks on paper.
Yeah, I just think the Nico style is so much better for split pushing. And especially since he's getting buffs on it too.
It's kind of funny though, because I actually think almost all the pros I've seen are absolutely horrible at York, and I think it's because they just don't play York, and they see that it's a strong champion. But I feel like people haven't actually put in, like, how many games can you honestly say most of these pros have played on York? Right, like 5. Maybe, right? So I feel like a lot of the things people just don't understand little things about the champion. And York didn't win a single game in LCS. It lost every single game, but everyone agreed that it was a really strong pick, right?
Yeah.
And teams didn't play well around it. Teams didn't pick it into matches that made sense. I mean, the first pick York is an example, but also Solo got it as a last pick this last weekend into a team that had Cassio, Aurelia, and Yasuo. Yasuo statistically is the worst matchup in the game for York. So, like, even though he was against Cassio, which might have been winnable, even if you got ahead, then you have to side lane against Yasuo or Aurelia, who can both beat you, both have easy dashes to your ghouls, and so it's like a lot of the times which people are picking it never really made sense to me, and I don't know, it's kind of a weird pick because it's not something that any of these guys will ever play in solo queue, and as a result, I mean, Dokla, I guess maybe is the exception, but.
And he was actually good at York. Like, they actually won a bunch of games on that. Like, that was the one exception.
Well, that was
he stole that from
Alorm.
Yeah, I know.
He stole that from Alorm for sure. Alorm was the OG York. Back when we did internals on Echo Fox, he would play against Huni's Gangplank as York.
Yeah, it's really good in that matchup.
It was really good, and that was one of the things that he really liked. And then Dokla stole it, and he stole all the glory.
York right now, by the way, is 0-4 in the LCS with a 0.4 KDA.
Yeah,
Really abysmal.
Yeah, I mean, it's just
not even been taking towers or anything. Like the York picks have been very worthless.
I think he's really, really strong. It's just very specific scenarios he's gonna work. So like when you first pick it, like you can't just say, oh yeah, York looks really
this
good
draft
here.
is going this way for sure.
Yeah.
And you also have to play around it, especially in pro, because this champion is so garbage from behind. I feel like he's so incredibly bad from behind because his team fighting is terrible. So it's like you have to pick it as almost a counter matchup and then play around it and get him going and protect him from the other jungler. Because once he gets going, you can kill tower so fast. But anyway, that's getting off on a big tangent.
Time for a new game then. Because you think that Team Liquid probably have the advantage here against Cloud9. To get back to our featured matchup, you're now the coach of Cloud9.
Okay.
Reaper's out of there. I'm instated Coach Inero. You get full control of this team. What do you do to actually smash Team Liquid the hardest? What changes are you making? What's your draft going to look like?
Yeah. So
what are you feeling?
I'm going to ideally try to play through the top side rather than playing through my bottom. Because I'm accepting that like
Licorice is godlike.
Licorice is really good, and I accept that TL is most likely going to play through their bot lane with like that team setup. I would just put everything through top on Licorice. I would just try to have some advantage there, and then try to get some sort of counter pick.
So you want to pick red side then?
Yeah, ideally would probably be pretty good. Unless I'm blue side and thinking they're just not going to ban Jace, and then maybe I'll first pick Jace for Licorice. I think he's good at it. And then I would just try to get. I think Niski on Zoe is good. Give him a rematch of it, but.
He said he would land his battle stars this time.
I mean, yeah, if he does that, it's usually pretty good. It's a good way to kill people as Zoe. I don't know. I think it would probably just be through top side. I think if they can play through top side and their bot lane's not going to like lose really hard, which I think is definitely still possible because Sneaky's like not bad. Zazel's not bad. I just think TL has the advantage in bot side and they'll play through it.
What's your best don't lose bot side?
Don't lose bot side.
Is it Ezreal top bench?
I mean, if they can get like a Sivir Ezreal lane for free without getting like hard counter pick, then that's probably pretty good. That'd probably be the only thing I'd want to just stick them on for sure. Unless they randomly get Lucian, then that can be okay. But probably wanted to play through bot side if you're picking Lucian, so maybe not that one.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I do think that they should be focusing on top, and it's interesting because I think as far as the meta goes, there's not a lot of safe blind pick tops right now, right? Sion I think is still certainly blind pickable, but that's one ban, right? And Urgot is totally out of there. I think Aatrox, you can play it, but it is a much lower power level than it has been in the past. So I do think that if you go red side as Cloud9, it's very feasible to try to force like a carry versus carry matchup where Licorice has pick advantage, and then that is I think how you can win the game.
Who actually has side select in that game?
I'm not actually sure.
Get that.
But
C9, I believe, has side select.
So
C9 has
you would expect them to go red then, right? Like I think that makes a lot of sense. If you either ban Sion or you try to force a carry versus carry matchup, I think that's a pretty good way to win. Or if they want, you can go the kind of extreme split push style, but no one in LCS is really doing that these days.
Yeah.
Things like a Fiora or whatever. But well, I guess actually that's not true. We did have a couple Jax.
Yeah.
So we have had that.
I think TSM is probably the hardest committed to the pure split push, and I actually really like that.
It reminds me of early C9 from last year, where it's like you've got a hot young talent. Licorice was actually a rookie, and Broken Blade's not. Like, we keep reminding ourselves of this because he played over in Turkey, and not many of our viewers watch that league. But he's like, hey, this is like a hot young superstar who's like really good at playing carry top, and over the year you will learn to play other styles, which Licorice did, and Broken Blade will. But for the interim, C9 just only played split push for like the first half of the year. And TSM will probably do the same, and they will key in on what works for their players, and that's fine. Like Rise seems good, Jay seems good, Nico seems good. Like there's a pool for him.
Yeah, I think I think that's a key point though, is that there are a lot of viable split pushers now, as we've chipped away at Scion, and he's been taken down a notch. I mean, there are other tanks that you can utilize, but with the overall changes to the game, turret plates really, I feel like, help out those carry tops that you're going to try and go for. Because before, Maokai sits under his turret, heals a bunch off these minions, gets a decent amount of CS because there are AoE too. And even if it is a losing matchup, like gets enough CS to be a tank in the mid game, and his opponent doesn't have the extra income of the turret plates that they're getting that whole time.
Yeah, exactly. By the time you would have killed an outer turret in any other lane back in like season 2018, you would have gotten about 3 plates. So you'd have like 480 gold to spend, which is like what you get from a turret anyway.
Yeah.
So like individually, you're as ahead as you would be, and then you still have more turret to kill later on to like leverage that advantage.
It's more where that came from.
Exactly, right? So that's what you're getting out of advantageous matchups is you're getting that gold, but you're getting it piece by piece. You get it like first recall, second recall.
Yeah.
Plus,
And the bank is bigger.
If you have a winning topside, you can play to Rift Herald more, and I'm seeing more and more people now where if you have a carry top, you just take the Rift Herald together, and the jungler just drops it top and then walks away. So that
I die inside every time I see that.
But
I want my money.
It makes
It's like
sense,
700 gold to the top laner when you get first turret plus 2 plates.
Exactly,
It's absurd.
and gold's focused on one person is almost always better than gold diffused among a few people, right? And especially like in the Jax game and things like that. You don't outscale Jack. You don't outscale some of these champions. So getting them to an early Triforce can feel so doomed for the other side. So I do think that's definitely a smart way. Do either of you guys think that the other guys, you already said you think TL is going to win. Anyone think C9 is going to win?
I would be willing to take that side. I'd be willing to bet it. I think it's a super close game. And, if they play a best of series, then maybe I have slightly higher percentages for Team Liquid to win the series. But I would very easily split my vote and go Cloud9. I think Cloud9 have a super good chance of taking them down.
It's coin flip for me.
Yeah.
I think they're like of equal skill.
I think since C9 actually has side select, it's actually pretty possible they win. I think side select actually really matters a lot for them, especially right now. I think side select's really overpowered.
Yeah, it should be super super close. I'm very excited for that one. I think TL's gonna win, but I think it's exceptionally close. I just think it's more. It's
all right,
more consistent.
Let's actually predict it then. I'll predict Cloud9.
Yeah, I'll go TL.
Cloud9.
I'm going TL.
Yeah, I just think.
I'll do C9.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll flip flop.
You switched.
Yeah.
I think Doublelift is able to more consistently get an advantage bot lane than Licorice getting an advantage over Impact top lane.
What pushed me over the top is that they have side selection for this game.
Yeah.
TL had it for the last game.
Yeah, should be pretty hyped though. All right, TSM, they are solidly in 3rd place. They lost a game that looked like they were going to win against Cloud9, but they did beat TL. What do you guys think kind of is the ceiling for this team, right? Are they on the level of TLC9? Will they get to that level? Are they just not as good as people thought?
Yeah, I mean, I have the easy answer, which is like, I think they are of equal skill, and their ceiling is they win LCS. And okay, they will probably never meet the win record of C9 and thus get the bye. And so there's one more chance to be upset in playoffs. So I guess their odds are technically lower. But if you just like made a 3-team group stage and said, okay, when he's going to win NA, it's any one of those 3 teams at almost equal odds.
I want to examine that a little bit closer of like the skill and the skill ceiling and how we actually define these terms. Because I would definitely say that TSM have made more individual errors that are actually game-changing errors. Sometimes it's a 2v2 skirmish with Broken Blade and Acadian or something in a side lane, or sometimes it's rushing in with their poke composition and then not keeping track of their flashes, splitting up, at these big moments, I feel like. But on the same token, I do agree with you as far as the skill ceiling. I think they've played the split push, super aggressive lanes, invading jungler style. The best, well, maybe Cloud9 have actually had a couple games where they have played better, but the most games I think for TSM, and in general, I think that is a good strategy to be practicing right now in this meta, and they've put the most time in on it. So I think that they are on the upward trend, and I think their course does end with Cloud9 and Team Liquid.
I think they're kind of where they're going to end up. I don't think they'll be higher than C9 or TL at any point. Like I think they're good, but I don't think they'll ever pass. Whichever one they end up against, I think they'll lose.
What do you think their critical flaw is?
Everything that they do well, I just see that C9 and TL are much more consistent about. they just feel like all of the other teams where they can. I don't really buy into the whole thing that they're doing something like crazy different than other teams. I think they're really just kind of doing the same thing. They're picking basically for scaling most of the time as well. They're chilling. They're going to get a lot of wins doing that. But C9 and TL are just more consistent about doing it. I think they have tried some things, and I know from like playing them in scrims, they have tried stuff, but I haven't seen it pop up too much, like actually on stage. And I think that the like fear or whatever it is to actually do that is going to be a little limiting for them. But I think that's true for everyone. I think everyone has that kind of flaw that happens. So I think they're a good team. I just think that C9 and TL are just them, but better, pretty much.
I'm more in your camp, I think, as well. I mean, you know, as far as them being just as good as Liquid and C9, I mean, I think there's a reason that they're 3 games behind C9 and 4 games behind Liquid, right? And I do think that consistency really matters. And as much as it is easy to say, oh yeah, you just fix those little mistakes and then you win a lot of those games, right? Like when they are consistently making those mistakes, and also they're the slowest team in the league by like a decent margin, right? Their average game time is 39 minutes, or actually a little bit above 39 minutes, which is insanely slow, even though people had been praising them a lot for, you know, for playing more aggressively than some other teams. So until they show me that they actually can build up that consistency, like I think they are worse than those other teams. By no means could they never challenge those teams. I think it is, you know, certainly possible that they could beat them in playoffs. I wouldn't bet on it, but they have had more errors and shown less consistency, even from advantageous positions, right? Like the Cloud9 game is a good example of that. Like everyone's obviously like hard flaming a lot of other teams when they get ahead and lose. This is a similar situation. There's another game I can't even think who they were playing against, but I remember Acadian playing AP Gragas, and they were at a really big like advantage, and they kind of did this one random fight in the jungle and it went tragic and the game falls apart. So they've had a number of games like that. Broken Blade, I think, for how great he is mechanically, has still had a lot of decision-making errors where sometimes he overextends or tries to do something crazy and messes up. And those cost you games, and those, especially in playoff series, like one mistake like that between 2 close teams often decides a series. So
that's why I think we're projecting this team into the future, like playoffs. How do you think that they are going to go blow for blow with Cloud9 and Team Liquid, these top teams? Because undoubtedly, like you're saying, like they've made a lot of these individual errors that have cost them games, and they have new guys. You know, where Acadian just came in for Grig after he hurt his wrist, and Broken Blade obviously just joining the team. Is it one of these things where you feel like, with the time of a season playing together, by playoffs that comes around, or it's not going to happen?
I don't think it's going to happen in spring, because I think we're close to playoffs now, right? We're going to week 7, and you know, it's not that much more time, I think. So it is possible, certainly, that they could beat these teams in playoffs, but I would certainly bet, I think, on Liquid and C9, unless there's some massive transformation of these teams in the last couple of weeks. I think TSM by summer could certainly be right there with them. I think given that extra time, that's more like where I see that kind of like scaling happening or whatever, right? They're scaling for summer.
The team bonding is coming together.
Yeah, like, but do I think that they're going to go to MSI? I think there's maybe like a 10% chance or something of them representing, right? Whereas I think for Liquid or C9, you know, I think that's like a massively higher chance. Like I would certainly bet that it's going to be Liquid or C9.
Yeah.
Like they're going to MSI. It's one of them. They're better now. TSM could go to Worlds. TSM could be better in summer. I don't know.
Yeah. One thing I'll definitely give TSM, and this is because they've been like actually practicing a lot of the stuff in scrims, is I think they've been way ahead of other people on like what the actual meta is. I think from what they do in scrims and pull out on stage, they've been on point with it. And if that's something that's going to give them a huge advantage in playoffs, I think that can be like a really good advantage for them to actually sneak out like an actual series win versus TL or C9. Yeah. So I really like that part of them. And I think a lot of that comes from just the players they have. Their players are really good individually, and they're all very smart people, and they're spending a lot of time playing. So they're definitely picking up on stuff way faster than other people, I think.
Yeah, I do want to point out it's Coach Zix. Right? He won 2 titles with CLG, who arguably didn't have the player skill to win titles. Like it felt like he did a lot with relatively little. When like. And like I'm not trying to clown on the old
and double lift and Afro
for
move
one
for
of
the
them,
first
right?
one.
But
the first one.
But I mean, to me, it's like you're still clapping like Hanser at what felt like his peak or close to his peak, and Bjergsen especially, right? When Bjergsen was MVP material over and over again. So like, not to clown on those players, I think they are very good and they deserve the title. I think Zix is just a very good coach. He gets a lot out of his players, and like you have TSM making, I think, very fast growth, and like I trust in Zix, and I trust that he's going to bring the team up, and I felt the same way about you when you signed with Golden Guardians. Like he's going to bring the team up.
You
Like
just saying
I
that
didn't
'cause
for
I'm
whatever
here.
it was. Worth. I was telling everyone this Inero guy,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure
yeah.
again.
Yeah.
I thought he's
Year.
an 80
So
carry game.
it's
And
Golden
Fired by
Guardians is
summer,
TSM in the
no
finals. What I'm
chance.
saying. You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, like I don't know. I think there are coaches that bring players above and beyond what you expect of them just on paper, and that's what I see in Zix.
well, that actually brings us to the discussion of the clump. All of the other teams that are not
Yeah.
our top three.
The upper clump.
The upper clump is one game above the lower clump, by the way.
Far
It was
superior.
It was just one big clump.
Very
and
superior.
They barely broke off into two now, and one of them.
Yeah, it's because one
The
dropped
lower
down to
clump is the
join.
drips on the bottom.
But luckily for you, you are the coach of an upper clump team.
Higher society.
Exactly.
Nice.
You can feel superior for this week. How are you going to differentiate the Golden Guardians from the rest of these clumpers?
I mean, I think when you look at the teams
We'll
in the
use
clump,
Yeah.
there's a lot of guys that started off like really strong and are definitely downward trending, and then there's the teams that have started off like really weak and went up. Like TSM was even one of the teams that started off really bad and then just upward like really really well. I think that we're on the side where we've been trending upwards.
Yeah,
Like
you
we started
04,
04.
5-3.
You can't really get much worse than 0-4, you know?
0-5.
So
If you only play 4 games,
Yeah.
it's hard to get worse than 04.
I guess there's 0-5 through 18. There,
Yes.
there is worse.
Oh, you know what I think is worse? 10th place, 2 consecutive splits in a row.
Yes.
In 2 leagues.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that would have
The
been me.
quadratent.
That one's a
You were
pretty,
going for the
pretty
best.
good achievement. Yeah. Definitely hoping to not be that. Definitely not going to be that in both leagues.
Yeah, no. You're solidly 8th in Academy. It's fine.
Yeah, we're chilling. We're in another minor clump in
Yeah.
Academy. I don't know. I think some teams started off, got a lot of wins at the start where everyone's really inconsistent. I think this happens every spring. And a lot of people have that shakiness of like transitioning scrims to stage or where they're like scrimming something constantly. Like what happened to us? We scrimmed a bunch of things that had really good success in scrims. And like as staff, we weren't good in identifying like this is obviously just a scrim champ because everyone's inting. Like the other teams are just running it down because it's the start of the season and they're not like in full tryhard mode. And we fell into the trap as staff and just still picked it and played it on stage.
The
And
old Lucian top, eh?
Lucian Top was really nice. Lucian
Yeah.
Top was good.
The best game of that series. by
Yeah.
far.
So this happens. We lose a bunch of games we shouldn't lose. We have some like other issues going on that cause losses, and so that is like really hard for us. But we got out of it. Like we got out of it. Everyone stayed positive, knew that we were better than that, and so we're going up. Like 2 of our losses of the 3 are against TL and C9,
Yeah.
and both of those games for us were very winnable.
And the
Yeah.
clutch
Like-
one was trolling.
Yep,
Yeah.
that was
Clutch was trolling.
that was
No, they were
that was a,
trolling.
that was a good
Trolling.
game.
Yeah.
yeah.
That was a good game. That was great.
It was something.
So we don't count that one, and we've had a few of our wins have been not like the cleanest as well, and that's something we're aware of. That's what we know about. I think a lot of the team's wins right now in the LCS are really not that clean. So at least we're on the favorable side of it. We've been doing better and being more consistent about what we're actually doing. I was just building off of that, so I think we'll be good.
Any specifics? Because I'm looking at this clump right now, and you are in the same clump with FlyQuest.
Yeah.
That is a team that, for most of this split, maybe it's one of the ones you feel got a lot of early wins off of inconsistent teams. But I really thought, even in their losses, this team did look like they had more purpose, kind of more consistent. They had the game plan and they were executing on their game plans pretty well. How do you guys kind of differentiate specifically from that team?
I think FlyQuest are good in the way that they're consistent. Like they are a relatively consistent team. And with that, they were doing exactly what they needed to do to get wins. They were just drafting very simple stuff that's just going to be a free win for them as long as they don't just int. And that's going to get you wins. But I don't think that they've actually done a lot to like grow as a team. And that's not like to necessarily flame like, oh, you guys are awful. I just haven't really seen it. And to be fair, I haven't scrimmed them a lot, so I don't know. But on stage, I've just kind of seen the same things. And I think as teams just progressively get better, if you're only doing this one thing, I think it's going to fall off eventually. And I think that's kind of what's happening to them. I still think that they're a fine team. I think they should be in playoffs. But I don't think they'll do like anything amazing. They're just going to be TLC9 TSM, but like the light version of it, really.
Yeah. That's kind of how like people talk when people talk about skill ceilings and stuff for a team. I felt like this team played to their level a lot earlier than what some of the other teams did when some other teams were playing maybe below their level. And I think that they had played like quite consistently in the early stages of the season. And I feel like for the most part, what we see is what we get from FlyQuest. And as other teams are improving throughout the split, it feels like they have stayed more at a similar level, and that is causing them to lose more games, right? You know, it was a couple weeks ago. It was like, well, are they the second best team in the league? And then they played C9. It's like, okay, well, you're not second best team in the league. Okay, well, they're going to play TSM. Are they the third best team in the league? Okay, well, they lost to them too. Well, you're not the third best team in the league anymore, right? And then they had a rough weekend this weekend, and it's like, okay, well, are you even the fourth best team in the league? Because CLG and Golden Guardians, to me, out of the clumpers, are the ones that are looking
catchy,
like
The Clump.
they're on the up and up, right? So I think they still are a playoff team to me, but it is feeling like they're staying at the same level, and everyone's kind of like slowly passing them.
I think one thing from it that can be good though is what they're doing if they're working on building like fundamentals and getting Viper just used to playing like this very simple style, just doing this and trying to like, get him used to the whole system and used to how everything goes. If that's their goal and they're looking like long term with it, I think what they're doing is not bad. But I think it can really work for them overall. And I mean, I think he's looked good, and I think Centauran has been one of the best junglers in the LCS for like a while, like undercover.
Yeah,
one of the
I think
best.
he's great.
Kobe's a big fan of his.
Yeah.
He's really good.
Yeah.
We kind of mentioned it before last weekend, but so many people have now been like, "Oh yeah, Santorin, this super underrated, undercover,
Yeah.
not
It's
big."
like he's getting
It's like
hard
when people
placement.
used to talk about Smithy. I remember for a long time, everyone would be like, Smithy's really underrated. But when everyone in the whole
Everyone
world
says
is
it.
saying he's
He's
underrated,
Sejuani.
well, guess what? He's not underrated.
I think it's
anymore.
like the
just good.
community underrates him because they don't notice it. Like they don't
Yeah.
see it. They're just like, yeah, I mean, he's killing jungle camps, but no one really
Yeah.
catches.
I do also like what you're talking about for kind of the specialty though with Viper. I really want to see him continue to blossom. Like it was so exciting having the Riven in there. But if FlyQuest also take like a similar stance on getting him hard split pushers, they use the Nico also, the on hit or something. They use some other very powerful side laners, and they have Santorin support him. I think that could be something that would elevate, kind of a strategy for this team to incorporate that could elevate them. And show us something that we haven't seen completely this split maybe.
Like I think a lot of teams that are in the clump have like those little specific things they're probably focusing on because they're looking long term. Like even TSM, the way they're playing might just be because they're trying to make Broken Blade feel comfortable and just play around like what's comfortable for him and make him as good as possible. So for summer where it like matters even more, he's going to be as good as possible. FlyQuest is probably doing the same thing, like I imagine with Viper. If they're not, then okay, then that's probably not the best approach. But if that's what they're doing, then I think it's pretty good. And I think like those teams at the upper part of it doing it are like on a good path if they're focusing on it.
I'm curious for you, before we move on to the lower clump.
Yeah.
Is it frustrating? Even right here on the show, we're talking about, the top of the table. We're talking about teams that we think could go to MSI. None of us talked about Golden Guardians. Is that frustrating for you? Do you feel that you guys are being overlooked maybe by the community when people look
He knows
at,
his place.
when people you realize
And
they're-
it's not at MSI.
No, it's not frustrating for me. I don't really care about public like expectations.
Do
from
you
it.
see yourself as an MSI team? Do you see your guys being able to do that?
I think we can. I think we can win against literally everyone. Our games versus TL and C9 were still good games that we could have won. I think if we were on the side where we're just getting smashed by them and like knowing that they're not going to be that great in laning phase and we're still losing, then it'd be like worrisome for me, But I think everyone's beatable. I think that we can still get there, and I'm like really trying for that. I really want to go to MSI. I want to beat these teams that I've been looking at and knowing like they have very blatant flaws, and I want to abuse them. So I think we can.
So you're subbing yourself in.
If you
Yes.
if you don't go to MSI, can you offer these blatant weaknesses of the other international teams to the team that goes so that NA will be powerful?
Wait, I was talking about the NA team.
Oh no! I thought you were talking
You're like,
about.
I have all these strats for beating
Yeah,
Griffin.
I
I
was
thought
like,
you were
wanna
like,
see that.
I've been watching this Griffin
Give me
team.
that Froggen choke.
They're not that good.
Griffins
Yeah,
free.
Griffin
What are you
looks
talking
really
about?
abusable.
Yeah, 1+ Phoenix, easy.
Just beat them in lane.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm talking
All right,
about
now
Griffin G2. You know,
I was like,
they're
whoa, there's some big brain coaching going on here.
let's get
This
down
guy's
to
some G2 kryptonite.
Yeah, I mean, we were the team to beat G2 last year.
there you go.
We were the one team, and then everyone else dropped the ball.
Yeah.
And you have a
Really
grudge.
hard.
You have a grudge ever since they pulled your internet when you were playing.
Yeah, actually, really do.
Yeah,
really have a
since,
grudge.
since he DDoSed you.
Yeah.
All right, now we're getting into the dregs of
Inero.
society. We're in the lower clump here. We got Echo Fox, we got 100 Thieves, and Clutch. The one definitely standing out to me, it's been such a big topic of conversation, is 100 Thieves. This last weekend, I think, was incredibly disappointing how they played.
Yeah.
And it just seems clear this is actually just a bad team. And I don't think that their players necessarily are bad, but as a group, they are bad. And it is so weird to me to see them performing so poorly together and so consistently poorly together that I think there is little to no chance of them making playoffs. I think we're going to start seeing academy players coming in. I think it's going to be, a bit of a revamp, because even just looking at how Someday and Onda play together is just, you can tell these guys are either unable to communicate or not communicating, because they're completely on opposite pages consistently day in, day out. One is flashing forward while the other is running away. One is, looking for an all in while the other is going to farm their jungle. Like, it's just, they're not even in the same book, let alone the same page when you're watching a lot of the 100 Thieves teams. And then their game on Sunday, it just felt like they completely rolled over and died. It was playing against you guys.
They should have beaten us. There was no excuse for us to win that game. Like, I think we entered draft really hard, and we should have lost 100%.
So, when you were watching that game, let me take you back.
Okay.
Scroll down memory lane.
They've got a lot of vision control around Baron, and they're thinking this Baron objective looks real nice.
It's really free.
And you've got 1, 2, 3, like 5 elemental drakes. You see them start up the Baron, and your team go to the Elder Dragon. You're like, oh, yes, good trade, team. Very smart. Get our Elder Dragon buffed up by all these elemental drakes.
Yeah.
And then you see them pull off of the Baron, walk down to mid lane, and then recall and get nothing in the trade, because I was sitting on the analyst desk with Mark and Dash, and we were freaking out. Like there was going to be some sort of pause or something, like something had gone wrong in this game.
Yeah.
I actually could not believe that happened. Like, thoughts?
That's embarrassing.
My mind was actually blown.
It's really bad. We should have they should just be playing around the Elder and not let us get it.
Yeah, first of all, like, okay.
Make us get Baron or something, or like, we're not going to take the Baron insanely fast. Like, just
part of the reason why we were freaking out was like, okay, so the setup, it's a bad choice to go for that trade in the beginning. But then they decide that they don't even want this trade. It's like, if I was like, Azael, I got $2 here for that dive cup. And then you gave it to me, and I was like, this dive cup is crap. I gave it back to you, and I gave you the $2. And I was like, I don't want that $2.
Yeah.
Carry on.
How dare you insult the dive cup, Kobe?
It was
It was a theoretical analogy.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. Watching that game was interesting. I expected to lose. Because I knew they were going to counterpick our top pick with something like that. Like, they were going to play a Riven, something like that. And then I knew it was going to be really hard for us to play the game. And then they get the lead, and then they don't do anything with it. It felt like, watching it, they weren't really trying to win. It really felt like they were mentally checked out. And I don't know their comms or anything, but it legit just felt like they were out of it.
That's exactly how I felt. It literally felt like when I play Flex and something bad happens in the game, and and everyone goes quiet. You ever play those games with your friends where everyone just stops talking and you all just know you're waiting to lose, but no one wants to be the one to put up the forfeit vote?
You're not even friends with everybody. You're friends with like one person, and so it's super awkward. You don't even know these other people.
There's maybe that one guy who's like, oh yeah, guys, we can still do it. And everyone's like, we can't fucking do it. Shut up. But still, you don't want to be the one to type /FF first. You're waiting for someone else. You're ready to click yes, like that. But someone else has got to put up the vote.
You don't mute Discord. You mute your microphone so they can't see that you muted it. And you're like,
special.
So that's legit what that game looked like to me. So I didn't agree necessarily with the Baron Elder trade, but at least I was like, okay, well, they're going to take Baron. You guys get Elder. Then you try to just play defensive. You give up some outers. The Elder times out. Okay, right? Then you maybe can get something with the Baron, or at least like try to fight for the next one. But not only did they not do that, they didn't even contest for any of their inhibs. Elder actually expired before you even got to the inhibs, and then they legit just backed off. They have Zach, Victor, Ezreal, all these champions that have been scaling the whole game. They have all their items. They didn't even attempt to fight anything. They literally just completely sacrificed the base. It was.
Yeah. I even think if they just got Baron, they could have won the game still.
I agree.
If they would have just traded, I'm pretty sure they would have won the game. Everyone was just like, what?
Yeah.
Why didn't they take this? Like, the players are playing it. I think Golden Guardians put out a video today on it, but everyone was legitimately saying, like, why didn't they take this? I guess we'll just go to Baron.
Your social media has been really funny, by the way.
Yeah, they're doing a lot better
Whoever's
this
doing
year.
that gets the props.
Yeah.
It's so much better.
Froggen says something like, what the heck? They didn't take it? Oh, I guess I forgot I was in NA or something.
Yeah.
Like something along those lines, right?
Yeah, he had to
and
drop
it's just
the
like they're all flabbergasted too. That game was just, to me, the death of 100 Thieves, where I'm like, okay, after this weekend, you're not making playoffs. There's actually no chance.
And then the clutch game, they were getting perfect gamed.
Yeah.
Like, they should have lost that game
And then
too.
Piglet entered.
And then everyone entered.
Well, I know. Then the rest.
Everyone who wasn't a part of the decision to walk up and hit Baron for that 8 minutes entered.
Yeah.
So do you guys have a
pretty
dark
insane.
horse then from the lower clump? Is there anyone you think can make the run?
Clutch Box Thieves.
I think that Clutch could.
Mm-hmm.
I think that of the people that are actually there, they have the most ability to, just because drafting against them is going to be really problematic now that they've shown that they're willing to flex these types of picks around. And I think if you can get an advantage like that, and I know that Huni, especially as a player, is someone who's going to be really flexible for like these different types of like carry champs and top.
Yeah.
That can be really problematic for teams. And that's definitely something that's troubling. I think for the others, it's stuff that's too predictable and there's nothing too great sticking out about them. I think for Echo Fox, Phoenix is a great mid laner. I think their bot lane is okay. Like
Phoenix has been playing
consistent.
really well.
I think Phoenix is a great player overall. Like last year on Echo Fox 2 was, I think, still underrated by people. I think he's just a great like individual player. And with the right like jungler with him, I think he's always great as long as he has someone to just like communicate and talk to and work around.
Someone should tell him to buy more wards, though.
Yeah.
His warding is
bottom.
actually insanely low.
Don't call out Phoenix for that.
No?
He's a nice guy.
You've had that interaction?
Yeah, I think when he worked with Dardoch, it was a lot better because Josh kind of knew that weakness of him and covered it really well. And always talked to him a lot so he would know what was happening. So like our mid jungle synergy was really good with those two. But I think that he has that as a weakness, but he knows about it. It's something he's tried to work on, but he's just a really
He tries to
really-
work on.
really-
You
He
just-
tries
you
to
just
flip
buy
it.
Buy a word when you
He's
work off.
trying to click it, and he's like,
You put a post-it note.
I missed. I can't get that ward.
yeah. And I know it's just definitely not as simple as, hey, Phoenix, you should be warding this, but he knows that's
Funny story.
he knows for sure.
So I looked up myself on one of these solo queue apps where there's a lot of things that like judge you and they give you badges and stuff. This one, it had like camps top lane a lot, all this stuff of like gets a lot of kills here, does very good at controlling jungle camps. Terrible warder was one of them.
Nice.
So I made a point that every time I go back, I make it a habit to buy a control word, and then I just always place them in Pixel Brush or something, like some generic place. But I just made it a habit to actually get them all the time.
Yep.
And the badge went away.
Nice.
So it's as easy as that.
Wow.
If I
Really-
can do it,
really good.
Phoenix, you can do it too.
Great. The inspirational speech from Kobe. I appreciate that. I want to jump on the clutch point really quickly because it felt like Huni had a lot of good games in a row on mages. Like he clapped someday on the Karma top. He had a really, really good Cassiopeia game last week as well. Like I feel like he's found a champ pool that lets him go back to old Huni. Like back when he was clapping kids on Fnatic, back on like Spring Split Echo Fox when he was like actually like a top 3 top laner again. Like if mages are the way, he goes back to old Huni. Like Clutch is good and Huni's good, so here we go.
Yeah, I think it's like what they have to do. I think putting Huni on tanks, even though like it's going to be meta sometimes, it's just not as much benefit as you're going to get with that team. I think the way their team is built, they need more of a carry threat from top side.
Yeah.
Because I don't think their bot lane's providing it, and I think Tanner's going to do a lot more if he's like helping the rest of the team.
To me, the jungler just has to be so predictable on this team, though. Because if I look at the Echo Fox lineup, and the jungler is not transitioning top triangle, between mid and top the entire game, I feel like it's gonna be a failure. Huni for the last year has been #1 gank target, and the percentage of successful ganks on him has been astronomical.
Quite high.
Plus, I have this same thing with the Phoenix warding style thing that at least like you're saying, maybe it needs something like a Dardoch who's amazing at tracking the enemy jungler and is walking around and, updating them with information, whether it is through wards or through the jungler. I feel like Echo Fox, like their path to success to me looks pretty predictable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think if Dardoch was on that team, that'd actually be in like a pretty good spot.
Are you meaning Clutch?
Yeah, because he's not with Phoenix anymore.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm meaning for Echo. If Dardoch was on Echo,
Because they were talking about Clutch
really
and then you
good.
started.
Oh yeah.
They were on the team last year.
It still trips me up that they
Okay. So
swapped.
you mean Clutch?
Yeah.
Okay, you mean
It
Clutch.
still trips me up that they swapped most
A
of
lot
their
that players,
rosters.
and you still got Echo
Okay,
Fox
I was
Phoenix.
just making sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, these guys talking about Hooney and then Phoenix in the same
You
sense.
change points, but no, he's talking
Yeah.
about
No,
Yeah.
They
happens.
just swapped all their
Yeah.
players. Like
Yeah.
it was just a
It
trade off.
happens.
Yeah.
But Clutch, I do have more faith in them now that it feels like they have at least a style, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
before,
Yep.
as much as Piglet in his recent interview still said he's the best bot laner in the league, he's not the best bot laner in
he's
the league.
not.
He has not been anywhere close to the
Yeah.
best bot laner in the league for a long time.
I don't think
And
ever in
people get
NBA.
mad that I say that, but it's true.
He's not.
And
Wait, what? People get mad that you say Piglet's not the best bot laner?
Oh yeah, Piglet has some fervent fans. He's got some big
Piglet
fans
is
still.
not the best bot laner.
So I mean, he's not even close, right? And it's at the start of the season, I said I thought he was near the bottom of the table as far as the marksman, and that's not even to flame him. I just think the quality of the league has gone up. Like, there's not really very many players anymore where you can be like, yeah, that guy is by far the worst. This guy's a big outlier, right? Like, there's a lot of strong players, but regardless, him playing, I think, non-standard bot lane, I think is more his style, because to me, Piglet, like in the last couple of years, always when he's looking bad, it's him overreaching, it's him kind of going too far. At his best, he's this very aggressive player. I think it's like similar to how Hooney plays. So playing something like an Aurelio or a Yasuo, where the correct play actually can be like R flashing in and doing all this crazy shit, like that makes more sense, I think, as what I see Piglet's success cases being. And if this team is all going to be trying to play aggressive, well, you shouldn't have your marksman playing some scaling marksman. Then like have him on the Aurelia where Hooney's gonna do some crazy shit. Well, Piglet can be right there too, and it can actually be effective. Plus the fact that you talk about drafting against them, they were drafting like triple flex, right?
Yeah.
All three of the picks could go in any lane. It's Yasuo, Aurelia, and Cassio. Where the hell are they gonna go? That makes it actually really hard to pick into, and it takes away so much of the red side advantage, which so many teams are picking red now. But against Clutch, if they're just gonna do triple flex every game, what does red really get you? You're just blind picking anyway.
And as Hooney is amazing on the Cassiopeia top. I also feel like if they give him the on-hit Nico, that thing is a menace in 1v1s. And it's actually insane. And a carry pick like that, there being multiple options, I feel like that they definitely should just hard index into this strategy and play through that.
Yeah.
Because he can definitely 2v1 with that champion.
Yeah. I think that they can potentially make the run to go to playoffs, but who did they play last weekend? It was 100 Thieves, and who was the other one? Because they ended up losing the 100 Thieves game.
Schedule.
Because I know losing the 100 Thieves game was actually really, really bad for their like playoff hopes.
Yeah, they lost the 100 Thieves game where they were like 8K ahead.
Clutch beat Echo Fox.
Yeah, okay.
Sunday was Echo Fox.
Yeah, like last weekend was one they really needed a 2-0, I think, to make it easier for them, but I still think that they can do it. Like, I think that their players individually are still good.
Yeah.
And the flexibility helps them so much.
Like this week's
drafting.
Clutch is like FlyQuest CLG, who like they're one game behind, but if we think Clutch are good, they can take those teams. Then if they're truly like number 4, number 5 team, like those are wins you pick up.
Yeah, I think they can 2-0 this weekend too. Like they really need to, and they basically have to win out almost to guarantee anything. But then they're gonna play Golden Guardians, and that's doomed for them.
Yeah, in a week and a half. Yeah, good luck.
All right,
the season.
Sweet. Well, we got to get an arrow out of
Clutch's
here.
season is really hard actually. It's Golden Guardians, TSM, and C9. So you got to get those wins early.
Yeah,
those are all in the same bucket of skill.
Yeah.
There you go. That's the Clutch road.
All right, we got some Twitter questions here.
Let's go.
David or Azael, do you want to take a crack at reading the Twitter handles?
We got from Light Blue Gangsta. He's asking, is there a place to get uncasted VODs? I want to get into casting just as a hobby. Also, any tips for an avid caster? Uncasted VODs, just mute the VOD and cast over it. That's what we all do, right? You don't need an actual like clean VOD or anything like that.
It's kind of tilting not having the game sounds, but
it's fine.
For what it's worth, there actually are a lot of the LPL games are broadcast uncasted. Because there's so many games now, they don't cast over all of them. So like if you go find LPL VODs, coin flip, you get an uncasted one that has like crowd audio and game audio.
That's very similar to what Captain Flowers did, how he had his rise, right?
Yep.
He was casting a lot of these other leagues super late at night, You post that you're doing them. You just try and put yourself out there, do as many as possible, and make it visible that you're doing them.
Yep.
Try and make your own Reddit thread. That's legal now. You could even like tweet
Illegal.
or post.
The police aren't going to get you.
Well, I mean, they got
you link your YouTube channel or whatever. Like, hey, I got some casted VODs if you want to watch them this way.
Yeah, and try and push it that way.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like Inero was saying at the very beginning of the show. Hard work increases your chances. You keep putting enough stuff out there, and then be ready to take the opportunity.
And I'd
gotta
say
take some risks.
I'd say Academy is a good opportunity now too, right? Because
Yeah.
all the teams
yeah.
have to do their own Academy streams.
Mhm.
If you want to be able to get on there, those teams have followings on their Twitch, right? And they're streaming on Twitch.
Yeah.
A lot of these teams I've even seen looking for volunteers. To
Yeah.
cast
Oh
and
yeah,
stuff.
for
Almost all of
us,
them.
actually, like we're not looking for someone to do it necessarily. Or at least I don't know if we are, but we stream our Academy games with game sound on, and there's no casting,
There you go.
so you can literally just download that VOD and cast over it.
So you can just
Something.
show up at the Golden Guardian's house uninvited and just start
Perfect.
casting.
Say,
Actually,
hey, look,
Inero
I'm a caster
invited me.
now.
Yeah.
I think you can show at Nick's house.
yeah.
Yeah.
At your
just-
personal
just
address.
Roll up to Nick Smith's house.
Perfect.
All right, we got another one. Can you?
It's Daryl R_21.
Yeah, but I'm laughing at the tweet.
Oh.
Can you use your connections to convince the skins team to make a Burgot skin, a giant burger with French fry legs? What kind of questions are these, Paul? I think that would just be awesome. Love the show. Thanks to all the makers that
I
possible.
agree.
Yeah, same.
Yes.
Agreed.
Yes. Well, okay. Well, I can't use my connections, so Kobe
Okay.
says he'll do it.
I can ask.
There you go.
My connections aren't very powerful.
I can answer this question in a way too serious manner, which is that if your skin name is a pun that only works in English, that's kind of weird. You're like, hey, how about all these Korean players where they don't call it a burger? I have no
Yeah.
idea what a burger is in Korean. Don't get me wrong, but like it no longer works for most players.
Don't we
Well,
have
just-
Birdio?
Translate it,
Yeah,
and it won't
but
sound
that's
as cool.
Gallia, who is a bird, right? Like he has wings and is a bird.
Burgot,
So
but he's
yeah,
a burger.
Yeah.
yeah, but
He has French fries for legs. He's a
Yeah,
burger.
I'm not sure you understand
Yeah,
the tweet.
Phreak,
you know,
I actually don't think you
I think
understand.
only
Phreak.
Americans eat hamburgers, is what I'm saying. So why would you make the skin for anyone else?
I went to Burger King in Korea.
I think,
They had a hamburger.
yeah,
That's true.
McDonald's is like everywhere, dude. I'm pretty sure everybody.
Okay, you know what? I'm wrong. This is the perfect skin
Thank
idea.
But the
You
point
convinced me.
here, the point Phreak was trying to make is that the skin team looks for things that will be universally identified by people all over the world because we are a worldwide game.
Yeah.
So if there's something that is specific to America,
Yeah.
then that won't work. But I do think that burgers are
Fairly
worldwide.
universal.
They are pretty worldwide. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of The Dive. Thank you, Inero, so much for coming in and lending us your insight.
You're welcome.
We wish you
for
luck
having me.
in all your endeavors and also with the MSI clapping.
Yeah.
Also, thank you, Phreak, for coming on as well. We'll be back next week. So if you guys have any questions, keep sending to us. Hashtag the dive LOL. You can tweet at Riot Kobe, at Riot Azael. And this weekend, it's going to be a top of the
At
table
Inero
clash between Team
At
Liquid
Inero.
and Cloud9
The
this
most
Saturday.
exciting game that we're gonna have all split long.
Much gaming versus CLG.
Okay, thanks.
It's gonna be the Golden Guardians matchup.
there
Woo, I quit.
Start of the day.
Exactly.
All right, tune in. Be there, be square. We'll see you next week.